All right, so we're working on packet tracer on, I'm sorry, the lab 292, okay? Basic switch and end device configuration. This is a what logical topology, right? We have two switches and it tells you where to connect the different cables. So that's the first thing we have to do. Let's connect the devices together. And one of the instructions is gonna tell you to also set up the IP addresses for the computers. All right, but just looking at this map, at this image here, I can start connecting everything without even looking at the instructions. Are you guys seeing my screen? Hopefully, yes. All right, so in Packet Tracer, I will go to the icon for the connections, it's lightning rod, and then the connection that I'll be using is a copper straight through cable from the computer to the switch and from the switch to the other switch and to the other computer. So I'm gonna start with computer 8. The computer's only gonna have one port for this type of connections for networking. That's gonna be fast Ethernet 0. Again, I'm recording this and I'm gonna post it on YouTube. So if you don't wanna be on YouTube, you can turn off your camera, your webcam. All right, so on the switch, it's got multiple ports, 24 of them that I can use, including console and gigabit ports. Over here on the lab is gonna tell you which port to connect to. F06 stands for Fast Ethernet 06. Go ahead and connect that. I'll grab another cable, click on the switch, and the switch going S1 to S2 is using Fast Ethernet 01, going to the other switch on Fast Ethernet 01. I'll do the same for the next computer. Click on the switch, F018 to the Fast Ethernet port on the computer. All right, now it looks like on my actual image here, so I'm gonna scroll down. This is scenario. The scenarios are important. Hopefully it helps you visualize like you're doing the job, and it places you in the scenario that you might find yourself in later on. So you can read those if you want to. I'm going to skip to the instructions. And step one. Step one says, cable devices together, done. Power on the devices. This is supposed to be in the classroom, hands-on. All the devices in Packet Tracer are already powered on. Connect the two switches, we did that. Connect the PCs to their respective switches. We did that also. Visually inspect the network connections. Everything looks good, everything's green. All right, configure the PC hosts. So it's talking about the computers, right? IP address information according to the addressing table. The addressing table is referring to this table right here. You'll have to come back to it later for the switches also. So PCA should have this IP address and this mask. We're gonna cover this later, but for now, we go to a computer, go to the desktop tab, click on IP configuration, and type in the IP address for this computer. You could copy and paste. I'm just gonna type it in. Subnet mask. Notice how it automatically gives you the subnet mask. We're gonna go over the IP address classes later on and why it did this. But for now, you can leave it like that. Let me move. I don't think there's anything left to the right. Oops. Yeah, let me make this smaller real quick. Okay, that's it. All right, so I'm done with this computer. I'll move on to the next one. Desktop IP configuration. And then the IPv4 address for this one, 192.168.1.11. And it populates the subnet mask for me. I'm good to go. And then you can label this information on next to the computers too, if you wanted to. All right, I'm gonna leave it there. Move on. Go back to my instructions. Verify PC settings and connectivity. All right, so how do you verify connectivity? Who's done this lab already? right? One of the ways you do it is by pinging the other computer. So from PCB, I can open the command prompt and ping 192.168.1.10. And if I receive a reply, that means there's a connection between here and there. Okay. And notice that we haven't done anything on switches. Let me pause this real quick. All right, so we didn't configure the switches yet, and we just connected the computers to the switch and the switch to the other switch, and now the computers can communicate between each other. Okay. The default configurations on the switches should be enough for a local network like this one. All right, so we had connectivity, and let me just display that again. The command I used was ping, and then the IP address of the computer. I'm on PCB. The IP address on the computer in PCA, I'm telling check this IP address and see if they'll reply to you. So this computer here is sending a request for, to that computer over there. And you can see that other computer replying back. All right, reply 4 times. That means we're connected. All right, so verify PC senders and connectivity, check. All right, and I believe you should have, if you have this other window open, you'll notice that you have 16% completed. All right, configure and verify basic switch settings. All right, so now we're gonna go into the switch and configure the basic configurations under it. So let's start with switch 1. And let's see if it tells us what basic configurations to use. So I disabled the CLI on this labs because on real life, you'll have to use a console cable. So if I go to a PCA, I'll click on the, okay, let me start again. You go to your cables down here, click on the connections icon. Then this blue one is your console cable. That's the one you're gonna use to configure the devices when you're doing it next to the device and initial configurations. So I'm gonna click on the computer. RS-232 is the port that I'm gonna connect that console cable to. And then I'm gonna connect to the switch on the console port. If you have a newer computer, you're not gonna have that RS-232 port. You'll be using a USB 2 RS-232 converter. All right, so now I can go into a computer, open my terminal emulation program, whichever one I'm using at the time, and then make sure that all the settings are correct. Normally you just check, you're gonna check to see if the COM port you're using, or to verify which COM port you're using and type it in and then click OK. Okay, so now you can see that I'm inside the switch. Just a little bit of information about the switch, and it's booting up at the moment. All right, so it might look like it's still thinking, but if you hit enter, you'll know whether it's done or not. And see, I hit enter, and it'll give me the prompt, the name of the switch, and then the prompt saying that I'm in what mode. Does anybody remember? User exec mode. All right, so give the switch a name according to the addressing table. So let's go back to the addressing table and find out what name it's looking for. This is gonna be S1. So we're on S1 right now. So to do that, we go to what mode?
Privilege exec.
First, we have to go into privilege exec mode. So that we use the keyword enable. All right, once here, we go to what mode?
Configure terminal.
Global configuration mode. So configure terminal is the keywords that I will be using, right? And you can use a shortcut, which is what?
Tab.
Config T. But yes, you can, if I use tab here, it'll autocomplete for me. All right, but config T. Now I'm on global configuration mode. Now I can start typing my commands. So they want us to name it first. So the keyword is what? Host name.
Host name.
Correct. And S1 is the name I want to give it. I hit enter and automatically you see it change the name for this device. All right, check. Let's move on to the next one. And again, if you open this window for the labs that I've created, you'll see that you're at 20%. Okay, prevent unwanted DNS lookup for the command for this one. And what is it doing? This is gonna prevent something like this from happening. Let's say I misspelled one of the keywords and the device thinks that I'm looking for a domain and starts looking for it. I can't click anything, type anything. So I have to wait until it ends unless I do Control-Shift-6, right? If I don't want this to happen again, then I'm going to set up or disable DNS lookups. So going back to global configuration mode, the command should be no IP domain dash lookup. And I believe it'll take both this and this. We can test it real quick. All right, no IP domain lookup, that should do it. So if I go back, and I'll do the exact same just so I know. This time it just say, hey, I don't understand what you're trying to say, but it's not looking for a domain domain on the server. Right? Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Kelsom, how do you get that screen back that shows you your progress?
Right. If you click on the icon on the taskbar, right? Or if you hover over it, you'll be able to see the different windows for Packet Tracer. But if you click it, you can navigate to the one that looks like it and click on it. That's if you're on Windows.
I'm on a Mac.
If you're on a Mac, the window is probably behind your Packet Tracer. So I'm not sure how to flip between the windows on a Mac.
Okay, thank you.
Did you find it?
No, yeah, I did. I see it. That says 25%.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, so prevent unwanted DNS lookups, check. Enter local passwords. Use class as the privileged exec mode and Cisco as the password for console access. All right, so let's do the privileged exec password first. How do I do this? Right, so how do we enter? Yes?
Go to global configure or global, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then it's line console 0.
That's for the console password. So we're talking about the privilege mode password.
Enable secret.
Yes. All right, so if we're in user exec mode, this is one way to remember, right? You type in enable to go into privilege mode, right? So when setting up the password, the command starts with the keyword enable. We're saying we want to create a password for this enable command, right? And if you don't remember anything else, you can do question mark here after enable. And you'll notice that you have two keywords you can use, password or secret. If you set up password with this keyword, then it's not going to be encrypted. If you set up password with a secret, it's going to be encrypted. And let's see. It doesn't specify if they want it encrypted or not. So I'll do both. And if I do both, it's going to, if I do both, it's going to take the secret one. But if you're working on Packet Tracer and Packet Tracer looks for specific keywords. So I'm just going to do both just to show you, okay? So the password for the enable or privilege mode should be class. So I'll do that. And then I'll do the encrypted password, secret, and this is going to be class also. It says the enable secret you have chosen is the same as your enable password. This is not recommended because, again, password is not encrypted. It's plain text. So if I go back and I do show run, right, with a shortcut for show running config then I will be able to see here the passwords. So enable secret is encrypted and the password is not encrypted. We can read it. And if we're using the same password, then somebody can guess it and use that to get in. Again, if you have both set up, the one that is going to be used is this one. That one's not going to be used, but it'll still be in the configuration unless you encrypt all the passwords under, which is something we'll be doing later. All right, so going back to global configuration mode, that was the password for my privilege mode, right? Now I have to set up the password for the console access. What does it mean by console access? It's talking about this console cable going to the switch. If you're accessing the switch with that console cable, you want to secure that port, that specific port. All right, to do that, we have to go into line configuration mode, meaning that we're gonna configure that interface, okay? Specifically that interface. So for that is what command?
Line console 0.
Line console 0, or line con 0 for short. All right, from here, and again, if you did the packet tracers, you would have this knowledge already. Also, when we're going through the chapters, you should write down every command you find on there. All right, line console 0. So first thing we have to type in is the keyword password. We're trying to set up the password, right? And since we're in this line configuration mode, it already knows what we're trying to set up the password for, so there's no need to say console password or anything like that. We're already in that mode, right? So the password is gonna be Cisco. Is that the only thing we do for this password to work properly?
No.
All right, what else?
You gotta activate it.
We have to activate it, right? So if I go back, exit all the way out, I could have done end or disable, right? This is the first screen you'll see whenever you connect to the device for the first time, right? I configured the password for line console 0, but when I hit enter, it's not asking me for a password for line console 0 for user exec mode through line console 0. But if I hit enter again, or I'm sorry, if I type in enable, the password for that one is there and it should be class. All right, so what happened? Config T, we have to go back into line console 0 and type the keyword login. Okay, this is the keyword that activates the password. So now, and exit. Right now, when I come back into the operating system, the iOS for the device, I hit enter. Now it's gonna ask me for that password. And this is the password for this specific port. If you're using this port to configure the device, if you're remoting in, this password is not gonna show. All right, so the password is Cisco, and then now I'm in user exec mode where I can type in enable and then use the password class. Okay, good. We're done with step D, step 3D. Configure and enable the SVI according to the addressing table. Switch virtual interface is what it's talking about here. So if you're ever trying to ping a switch or remote into a switch, you need to have a virtual LAN interface set up on it with an IP address and subnet mask, okay? So let me show you real quick. Show VLAN brief. That should do it. Yep. All right, so we'll go over this later, all right? But this is gonna display the different virtual local area networks that are created on this device. Default is virtual local area network 1. Okay, this is the default one. All the interfaces, the physical interfaces, are part of this virtual network. Okay, just think of it like a group. This is how you group the different interfaces for this device. You can split it later on, but for now, just know it's there. And there's a few more. They're used for different things. We're not going to go over what this interfaces are used during the course. It's for another course. All right, but this default interfaces or VLANs, you cannot change the name for them. You cannot erase them, all right? But what it's asking you here is for you to add an IP address to this virtual network. So you can remote into the device or ping the device to make sure you have connectivity to it. That's the only reason you would do an IP address on this type of device. So again, I hit enter so I can move all that other information out of the way and continue with the instructions. So again, they said set up SVI, switch virtual interface, with this information, the IP address and the subnet mask. So this is going to be interface because it's a switch virtual interface, right? A virtual interface. And the name of the interface you're trying to go into, VLAN 1. Right? Now that I'm in this interface, I can set up an IP address for it. And if you do question mark, you'll see all the keywords that you can use in this mode. ARP, description, exit, IP. IP is what we're looking for. Shutdown and standby, all right? So I'm gonna do IP address. If you do question mark after IP space question mark, you'll see what other keywords you can use. And let me get rid of all that. Hit IP again and question mark so you can see the different IP keywords you can use. You can use address or helper address. Right now, we're looking for address. IP address, because we're trying to set up the IP address for this device. And again, remember, an IP address is like a home address when you're sending a letter through the mail, okay? But here is for this device to be able to communicate on the network, they need an IP address. So IP address 192.168.1.1. Subnet mask has to follow this. If you do question mark here, it'll tell you that. IP subnet mask. So 255.255.255.0. Right after this packet tracer, we're gonna go over IP addressing. So I'll cover what this is. All right, so I'll hit enter. After you set up an IP address on a switch interface, by default, this interface is shut down. So you need to say no shut to activate the interface. On a router, all the interfaces are by default shut down, and you will have to use this command on the routers. On the switch, the other interfaces like fast Ethernet, those are on by default. But this specific interface, the virtual one, was off. And you'll see a message saying, change state to up. So you know that it's now active. So exit. Okay, so I'll scroll down and I'm on switch 1, so I use the first IP address. So let me do the same thing on the other switch. Go to switch 2. Well, actually, we're still working on switch 1, so we'll wait. Oh, forgot. Console cable. Go here, terminal, connect again. Okay, so scroll back down. We're on we're done with step E, we're moving to step F. So I'm gonna exit because I have to be back in global configuration mode for this one. They want us to configure a message of the day banner to warn about unauthorized access. Now it's not giving us exactly which warning to give. So I'm assuming it's not gonna ask for this. But I don't remember how to configure this. Okay, so to create a banner, you type in from global configuration mode, banner, MOTD, message of the day. And again, you need a symbol. It could be a question mark, it could be a letter, it could be anything you want that's gonna tell the device or the operating system where your message starts. So I'm gonna use quotations for this. Then I'm going to say unauthorized access strictly prohibited. And since they didn't specify a specific message, then you can really type anything you want. Only that I don't remember if I added a specific message here and it's grading for that. I was looking at different instructions for this, but it won't matter. Okay, now let's hit enter here and it's done. Now I'm going to go back to the beginning so you guys can see that message. So as soon as you connect to this device, the next time you hit enter, you'll be able to see that message, unauthorized access strictly prohibited. And then you'll be asked for the password for that interface you're using to remote or to configure the device. So in this case, it's Cisco. And then enable class the password, go back to config T. All right, that message again, you can use it to give a message to other administrators that are gonna be using the device. And this is why it's called the message of the day. All right, you can leave some type of message there saying, oh, today we're working on this or whatever it is that you're gonna type in there. So it's not just for warnings. So that's step F. Save the configuration, okay, easy. Go back to privilege mode. What is the command for this? There's different ones. The one they're looking for is gonna be the specific one.
Copy, run, say, start.
It's gonna be copy, running, -config is the full command, right? Startup config. And shortcut for that would be copy, run, start, right? You do this, and remember, there's two files that you have to think about. One on non-volatile memory and one on volatile memory. What does volatile memory mean again?
Goes away when the power's down.
You require power to be able to store information on it, right? Non-volatile meaning that is going to be stored permanently unless you delete it, okay? So when the operating system or the device starting for the first time, you plug it in, it's going to look for that startup configuration file. And then if there is one, it's going to grab those configurations and then copy them into the RAM, which is what's going to be running from, okay? And then that's whatever configurations on RAM is what it's going to use for networking or whatever it's going to be doing, all right? So right now, when you're configuring, all your configurations is being stored on RAM, but until you use this command right here, copy running config startup config, is not going to store it permanently. So that means that if you restart the device or the power goes out, everything gets erased. So you have to run this command before the end or before you finish everything, right? After you hit enter, after typing the command, it's going to ask you, what name do you want to store it for? Leave it with the default name, startup config, okay? Just leave it there, so just hit enter again. And then you'll see building configuration and then okay. And if you do show startup config, it's gonna show you what configurations are found on that file. More about this later. All right, done with that step. Display the iOS version. I believe for this one, it's just version. Nope. Give me 1 second for this one. I need to figure out what the password is. I'm telling you that if you don't, all right. So again, show version is going to show you information about the device itself and the operating system that's installed on the device. Because just like Windows, you can update the operating system on devices to gain better features or to fix some bugs. Okay. So for now, just know this information here. Later on, they're going to ask you for specific information that you can find on here. And we haven't covered that yet. I don't think so. All right. Next, display the iOS version and other useful information. Oh, display the current configuration. So again, if you go back to your CLI, you can do show. There's a whole lot of show commands you're going to have to memorize. Show running config. All right. If you do this, it's going to show you what configurations the device is using at the time. So all the configurations and a little bit about this. Version 12.2 is the version for the operating system. Then it's going to show you the configurations you have created. Host name, enable secret, no IP domain lookup. This information we have not covered, so don't worry about it. Then the configurations for each one of the physical interfaces on the device. The configuration for the VLAN that we did. The banner is going to be there. the password for line console 0, and the passwords for line VTY 0 through 15, which we haven't created. All right. Display the status of the connected interfaces on the switch. You should be writing these commands down. They will come up later again. So the status of the connected interfaces. Show IP interface brief. That is the full command. This will tell you the status of the the interfaces themselves. And you can see that Fast Ethernet 01 is up and up. We'll cover this later. And then Fast Ethernet 6 is up and up. So it's properly configured and it's properly connected. And there's a good connection. All right. The rest of the interfaces, they're both down, meaning that there's nothing connected to them. All right. And VLAN 1 is up and up, meaning that you don't have that shutdown command on them. You can also shut down this interfaces. So let's do that real quick. Interface, and let's see which one is it. Fast Ethernet 01. And use the shutdown command, then go back to end and do show IP interface brief. Remember those keywords. And you'll notice it says administratively down. All right. And if you look at topology, you'll see that the connection there turned red. All right. So how do we enable that connection again? You can put no shutdown. I'll bring it back to default, which should be on, or enable it. All right, whichever way you want to see it. So now I can do end again to bring me back to privilege mode, and then show IP interface brief. And you'll see that it's up and running again. And right now it's getting the information for the interfaces. The switches are communicating between each other. That's why it's orange, and eventually it's going to turn green. All right, next.
Hey, Kelson, what was that command again? You have to go down to shut it down?
It's shut down. The command is shut down. You have to go into the interface, and then the keyword is going to be shut down.
All right.
Yeah, and to enable it is no shutdown.
No shutdown, okay.
Yep. All right, so next, configure switch 2, and it's just telling you to record the status. So right now you're looking at the status, and you just record it there. You don't have to write this down or do anything there. Then from PC1, I'm assuming, from a PC, ping S1 and S2. Again, those IP addresses and subnet masks that we configured on the switch. The only reason you would do an IP address on a switch would be either to be able to test connectivity with a ping, or to remote into the device for configurations through the network instead of the console cable. All right, why are some Fast Ethernet ports on the switches up and others down? Why would that be? I explained that already.
Because there's not a wire, they're not plugged in, right?
They're not plugged in. What could prevent a ping from being sent between one PC and another PC?
Computers shut down?
There's no line.
If there's no connection between the devices, right? So if this connection wasn't there, this computer cannot communicate. Right, this computer cannot communicate with this other computer over here. So when it sends a request for a reply to this computer, the request is gonna end here and it's not gonna be able to keep going. Right? So if there's no physical connection, that will definitely prevent you from creating a ping. All right, so let's configure. I'm gonna go through this really quickly now. S2. Oh, again, I need that console cable on the computer, RS-232, going to the port, console port on the device. Go to the computer, open my terminal emulator, click OK, and move on. All right, now I'm on the switch, and again, this one has default name switch. First thing it's gonna ask me to do is the host name, and it's gonna be S2. Now, don't worry if you have followed the instructions just like I did them. Don't worry if you don't get 100%. I'm at 58% right now. All right, now no DNS lookup, prevent unwanted DNS lookup. All right, the command for that from global configuration mode is no IP domain dash lookup. All right, done. Next, enter local passwords. First, we're gonna do enable password. Enable secret is the encrypted one, right? And should be class. And then enable, sorry. Yeah, I'm gonna do the password too. You don't have to. Password class. That should do it. And it's gonna give me that error. Again, if I want to encrypt all the passwords, that should be service password encryption. That's gonna encrypt all the passwords that are not encrypted. You can do it before or after, it doesn't matter. All right, now line console 0, password, Cisco, login to activate it. I'm good here, done with that. Configure SVI, the SVI for this device. So I'll go back over here, the IP address. I need to look at the IP address, which VLAN they want me to use. Later on, we'll cover how to create new VLANs. So interface, VLAN 1, IP address. And then that should be 192.168.1.2, 255.255.255.0, and no shutdown. Exit. Scroll all the way down. A message of the day. Banner, MOTD. Again, you need that beginning character and the ending character, so the operating system knows where your message starts and where it ends. Because you could have a full paragraph, and it needs to know where it starts or where it ends. Okay, next. Save the configuration. I showed you copy run start is the command you can use. You could also use the command write, and shortcut for that is going to be WR, and it's gonna back up the configuration onto startup. The NVRAM is not gonna ask you for a name though. All right, display the current configuration. We already did that. We're not gonna cover it again. And let's see where I'm at. And again, the banner of the day, I'm not sure what the message I had on there. So don't worry, if you get 95%, you're good to go. And that covers this lab. Let me stop the video here.